There is a particular kind of pain that doesn't scream. It just goes quiet. No slammed doors, no dramatic ending. Just a shift in the air, a colder reply, a delayed message. A feeling that someone who once reached for you now moves as if your presence burns. And if you've loved an avoidant, you know this silence can feel more violent than words. Because you're not just losing a person, you're losing your sense of reality. You start asking questions that have no edges. Did they ever care? Did I imagine everything? How can someone hold you like you matter, and then vanish like you were never there? And the worst part is this: their distance makes you chase clarity. Your nervous system starts begging for closure the way a body begs for air. The amygdala lights up. Cortisol rises. Your mind stops living in the present and starts living inside a loop, rereading messages, replaying the last conversation, searching for one sentence, one clue, one hidden truth that could explain why warmth turned into absence. But here is the brutal truth. The more you chased the answer, the safer they felt leaving. Not because you were too much, not because your love was wrong, but because every time you ran toward them for reassurance, it confirmed the one thing their system has spent years trying to protect. Distance is power, and closeness comes with pressure. That is the tragedy of loving someone avoidant. The very thing you needed to feel safe often became the very thing that made them retreat. And if you don't understand that, you will personalize their withdrawal forever. So let's go deeper than the surface story. Because underneath the coldness, underneath the ghosting, the detachment, the "I just need space," there is usually something less simple and more unsettling. Most avoidants do not leave because they feel nothing. They leave because they feel too much, and they have no safe place to put it. That distinction changes everything. When an avoidant forms a bond, it doesn't just activate affection, it activates threat. Real intimacy stirs the part of the nervous system that remembers enmeshment, disappointment, engulfment, criticism, or emotional chaos. Even if they cannot explain it, their body remembers. Their system interprets closeness the way some people interpret danger. What looks like love to you can feel like loss of control to them. So when the relationship deepens, when your needs become visible, when your feelings become undeniable, their brain starts doing what it was trained to do. It lowers dopamine around connection and raises vigilance around expectation. The body becomes restless, the chest tightens, the urge to respond becomes mixed with the urge to escape. They may still miss you while pulling away from you. They may still think about you while acting numb. They may still care deeply while behaving like you are optional. And that contradiction is what breaks your heart. Because you kept looking at behavior and asking, how can someone do this if they care? But avoidant behavior was never built to reflect love. It was built to regulate overwhelm. That means when they began to lose you, something very specific started happening inside them. At first, there may have been relief. Yes, relief. Not because losing you meant nothing, but because separation can briefly quiet the internal pressure they never knew how to name. No immediate texts to answer, no emotional intensity to metabolize, no mirror held up to their inconsistency. The silence feels like space, like oxygen, like the nervous system can finally unclench. And if you were still reaching out then, still explaining, still trying to repair what they had already fled from internally, that relief could harden. They could become colder, more certain, more distant, because your pursuit gave them an external reason to justify the internal shutdown. See, this is too much. This is exactly why I need out. But then something changes, because relief has a short half-life, and once the pressure of you is gone, the absence of you begins to echo. This is the part almost no one talks about. Avoidants often do not process loss in the moment loss is happening. They process it when the emotional noise dies down enough for the truth to creep in. Not during the chase, not during the argument, not when you are still available, but later, in the stillness, in the strange hours, in the spaces where your energy used to fill the room. That's when your absence stops feeling like freedom and starts feeling like subtraction. Not always immediately, but deeply. They notice you are no longer there to initiate softness, no longer there to bridge the silence, no longer there to decode their moods, excuse their inconsistency, or offer warmth after distance. The emotional supply they took for granted disappears, and suddenly, the system that once felt trapped starts feeling empty. And this is where the power dynamic quietly flips. Because when you stop reacting, stop chasing, stop trying to force emotional contact, you remove the structure they unconsciously relied on. You become still, and your stillness becomes loud. Silence is the concept most people misunderstand. Most people use silence like a tactic, a performance, a hunger strike for attention. But real silence is not manipulation. Real silence is self-respect without announcement. It is what happens when your nervous system no longer volunteers itself to be wounded in order to keep a connection alive. And avoidants feel that. They feel the difference between silence that is begging and silence that is gone. When your silence is real, it does something unnerving inside them. It removes the predictable pattern. Usually, they count on your return. They count on your message after the fight, your softness after their coldness, your explanation after their confusion, your willingness to keep the bridge standing alone. But when you stop doing that, their brain loses control of the rhythm. Suddenly, they cannot place you. And what the mind cannot place, it starts to track. This is when you enter them differently. Not as pressure, as mystery. Not as demand, as loss. They may not say it aloud. Avoidants are masters at disguising longing as indifference. But internally, things begin to move. They wonder if you're really done. They check your social media with a detached face and a restless body. They reread conversations they once ignored. They remember your tenderness in places where they used to focus only on the intensity. Memory becomes selective in reverse. The things they minimized when you were present become vivid when you are absent. This is not magic. It is nervous system recalibration. The avoidant mind often suppresses attachment when closeness feels threatening. But when distance becomes real, attachment can surge back through the cracks. The dopamine that disappeared during emotional pressure can return through uncertainty and deprivation. The person they pushed away becomes the person they cannot fully stop thinking about. And here is the part that shocks people. Sometimes they become more emotionally occupied by you after losing you than they ever allowed themselves to be while they had you. Because now, there is no immediate demand attached to the feeling. Now they can miss you without having to be accountable to you. They can fantasize about you without confronting the vulnerability of actually keeping you. They can feel your absence in private, where their defenses don't have to explain themselves. Picture it. They wake up and reach for their phone by habit. For half a second, their body expects your name. It's not there. They go through the day performing normal. Conversations, work, noise, distractions. But something keeps snagging inside them. A cafe you loved. A phrase you used. The kind of song you would have sent late at night. Their face remains composed, but the body knows. The body has started scanning for something it used to avoid. At night, it gets louder. Avoidants are often fine in motion. It is in stillness that the buried material rises. When the world goes quiet, the emotional debt comes due. They may feel an ache they cannot label, irritation with no clear source, a sudden urge to check if you're online. They may imagine reaching out, then pull back, then reach again in their mind. Pride fights longing. Defense fights memory. And under both of those is grief. Not graceful grief, not clean grief, defensive grief. The kind that says, "I'm fine," while thinking about you every day. The kind that watches your absence become real and starts obsessing not just over losing you, but over losing access to the version of themselves that only existed when you loved them. Because you gave them something deeper than attention. You gave them emotional contrast. You brought warmth to places inside them they had learned to keep cold. You invited feeling where they had built structure. And once that disappears, they are left alone with the architecture of their own defense. That is not comfortable. This is why some avoidants come back in fragments. A random message, a vague check-in, a small opening at midnight. They do not always return with clarity. They return with craving mixed with fear. Part of them wants connection. Another part wants to see if they still have access. Part of them misses you. Another part misses regulation through you. Part of them is touched by your absence. Another part is terrified that if you let them in again, the old pressure will return. So if they reappear, it does not automatically mean they have changed. And this is the warning you need to hear. Do not confuse being missed with being chosen correctly. Because yes, your absence can haunt an avoidant. Yes, your silence can stir obsession. Yes, losing you can awaken feelings they buried. But none of that matters if their awareness does not become responsibility. Feelings alone do not heal patterns. Missing you is not the same as being able to love you well. Let that sink in. Some of the people who miss you most are still not safe for you. That is why your transformation cannot be built on whether they return. It has to be built on what their loss revealed to you. It revealed how often you abandoned yourself to stay emotionally close to someone emotionally unavailable. It revealed how quickly your self-worth became negotiable in the presence of mixed signals. It revealed the old wound beneath the relationship. The belief that if you loved hard enough, explained clearly enough, waited patiently enough, someone would finally stop leaving. But that wound is exactly what has to end here. Because the deepest shift is not learning how to make an avoidant miss you. It is learning how to stop needing someone's confusion to become your identity. Read that again in your body. The power was never in becoming unforgettable to them. The power is in becoming undeniable to yourself. When that happens, your energy changes in a way no performance can fake. You stop sending messages your dignity has to recover from. You stop translating silence into hope. You stop romanticizing emotional unavailability as depth. You stop calling breadcrumbs complexity. You stop sitting in the dark trying to decode a person who benefits from your confusion. And, ironically, that is often when they feel you most. Not because you are trying to make them feel it, but because you are no longer leaking your life force into the gap they created. There is something profoundly destabilizing to an avoidant about a person who loved deeply and then truly let go. Not angrily, not theatrically, just fully. It confronts them with a reality they spend so much of life outrunning. Some losses do not wait forever. Some people do not remain emotionally stationed at the scene of their own abandonment. Some hearts, once broken awake, do not beg to be re-broken. That is when regret gets teeth. Because then they are no longer dealing with your pain. They are dealing with your absence as consequence. And consequence is harder to avoid than emotion. They may start imagining who you become without them. They may feel replaced by possibilities that once seemed abstract. They may wonder who is receiving the tenderness they rejected. They may compare every shallow connection to the depth they ran from. They may feel an almost unbearable friction between what they wanted in theory and what they destroyed in practice. This is where some begin chasing, not always outwardly at first. Sometimes it begins in the mind. More frequent thoughts, more checking, more idealizing, more restlessness, more attempts to subtly re-enter your field. They become preoccupied because the attachment that once hid behind deactivation now has nowhere to go, and the mind, deprived of certainty, starts circling. But again, do not make the mistake of measuring your worth by their obsession. Obsession is not devotion. Pursuit is not repair. Return is not transformation. Your real work is different. Your real work is teaching your own body that love should not feel like confusion, with moments of relief. It is teaching your nervous system that peace is not boring, that consistency is not less passionate, that being chosen clearly is not too much to ask, that you do not have to become emotionally starving to prove you can love. And once that lesson lands, something irreversible happens. You stop being magnetized by almost love. You stop interpreting withdrawal as depth. You stop trying to win people who only know how to value what they are about to lose. You become unavailable for the cycle itself. That is the identity shift. Not, I hope they realize what they lost, but I realize I was never meant to lose myself trying to be loved by someone afraid of love. That sentence alone can change a life. Because now, whether they come back or not, the center of gravity has moved. It is no longer in their hands. It is no longer in their text message, their timing, their emotional capacity, their internal conflict. It is in you. In your standards, in your boundaries, in your refusal to call self-abandonment loyalty ever again. So yes, what happens inside an avoidance mind after losing you can be intense. There may be relief, then emptiness, then memory, then longing, then obsession, then regret. There may be silence on the outside and chaos underneath. There may be late realizations. There may be internal collapse hidden behind a calm voice. They may care more than they showed. They may miss more than they admit. They may feel your absence like a private storm. But the deepest truth is this: Their internal experience is no longer your job to manage. You do not need to rescue them from the consequences of their defenses. You do not need to shrink so they can stay comfortable. You do not need to keep proving that your heart is durable enough to survive neglect. You have already survived enough. Now your task is not to be wanted back. It is to come back to yourself. To the self that does not beg for reciprocity. To the self that does not confuse intensity for intimacy. To the self that knows being deeply felt is meaningless if you are not deeply held. And when you finally live from that place, everything changes. Your silence becomes sacred. Your standards become visible. Your energy becomes unreachable to those who only know how to approach love through distance. And suddenly, you are no longer the one trapped in their avoidance. You are the one who walked out of the maze, whole, awake, unchased by your own wounds. Maybe they will think about you for a long time. Maybe they already do. Maybe losing you opened a crack in the armor they called independence. But your life cannot be built around being the lesson that broke someone open. Your life has to become the proof that losing you was never the tragedy. Losing yourself was. And now that you've found your way back, you are not here to be almost chosen, not almost loved, not almost understood. You are here to be met, or left alone in peace. And for the first time, that no longer feels like loneliness. It feels like power.